Good evening. I'm Jason Meller, the director of the Center for Texas Music History here at Texas State University. And I want to welcome you because this is our first on-campus event in a long while. So welcome both to those of you who were brave enough to come and join us in person, as well as those who continue to join us virtually through the live stream. I want to thank also the Center for the Study of the Southwest, the Common Experience, the History Department, and Performing Arts, as well as AAA, for their support in tonight's program. It also would not have been possible without our program coordinator, Christy Madden. And this is an exciting one. I will first introduce the person who will be guiding us through this evening. When Kathy Valentine suggested her as our conversant, I couldn't be more thrilled. It really makes for a dream team up here on this stage to have Sarah Bird, who is a leading Texas novelist whose near dozen works of fiction have accrued a bevy of awards. A Barnes & Noble Discover Great Writers Selection, a New York Public Library's Books to Remember, a Dobie Paisano Fellowship, the Texas Institute of Letters Best Fiction Award twice, and an Austin Libraries Award for Excellence in Fiction. She was voted into the Texas Literary Hall of Fame and has been awarded the Texas Writer of the Year by the Texas Book Festival. In 2017, she won the Austin Chronicle's Best Fiction Award for the 6th time and received the Texas Institute of Letters Lifetime Achievement Award. Her most recent work is Daughter of a Queen, and her 2016 A Love Letter to Texas Women with UT Press, which is a fitting companion to this evening, will be on sale later tonight. And Bird will be in conversation, of course, with Kathy Valentine, an artist who was recently elected to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for her work with the iconic Go-Go's. A native Austinite, Valentine's career has deep Texas roots, as she launched the city's first punk band, the Violators, in 1978 when she was still in her teens, and even before that, she had been in an English metal band that would go on to become Girl School. Valentine relocated from Austin to Los Angeles with the Textones, and shortly thereafter joined the Go-Go's, playing bass and writing songs with them during their meteoric rise and indelible peak in the 1980s. Valentine has made a great deal of music with all kinds of bands since, including currently with the terrific Austin fixtures, the Bluebonnets. She joins us this evening to discuss her best-selling memoir with the University of Texas Press, now in paperback, All I Ever Wanted. And there will be book sales and signing at the conclusion of the program. Please join me in welcoming our guest this evening.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Thank you, Jason. Thank you. And welcome, everyone. What a glorious event. I'm going to attempt not to be a squealy fangirl, because like everyone tuning in here in the auditorium with us everywhere, some of my happiest memories of the 80s involve the Go-Go's, so I'm a fan. But what I'm a squealy fangirl about is this memoir. I'm a giant aficionado of the rock memoir. I mean, I sort of read them all, from Chuck Berry to Acid for the Children. And this, All I Ever Wanted, is right up there with my other two favorite rock memoirs, Patti Smith, Just Kids, and Hunger Makes Me a Modern Girl by Carrie Brownstein. And this, holds its own right up there. So, I hardly know where to start. There's so much I admire about this book.
I have to say, I'm going to interject right here. I cannot tell you, I write in my book, I write a section about how when somebody you look up to, and I'm talking about being a musician, how it kind of equals a year of practice. When somebody looks up and they go, you're a guitar player. So I had that same feeling when Sarah said when she complimented my book and liked it. It was like, okay, this means something,
Oh, Kathy,
and it was really.
Sorry, that's giving me goosebumps.
So it's
we started talking about this really before I even knew you. We, bumped into each other at a party.
Oh yeah, you heard me talking about
yeah. And I was going,
yeah.
Oh my God, absolutely. And then, P.S. I just to the gift of working at UT Press with the divine Gianna Lamort. She Hello. She ain't so great. So let me just start. I mean, the velocity of this book, this sheer intoxicating velocity. Like you just rip right out, tell us the story that you're going to tell us, and then you tell with all this incredibly gorgeous imagery, and the writing is just so much more beautiful than it needs to be. You know, I mean, you're so my copy, honestly, you go through it, and it's like stars and asterisks. Every time there's something I just loved, it's like, you know, badoom. So,
she talks like a writer would write, doesn't she?
Because she has written. So let me just start off by, could you tell us a bit about the experience of deciding to write a memoir? Did you have any models? Did they inspire or intimidate you, or both?
I wanted to write. I definitely wanted to write, and I had written some essays, but I think what really gave me my confidence was taking some classes and doing well in school as a writer. And that kind of made me think, you know, and mostly it was creative writing, but even just a normal class where you had to do an essay and turn it in. And excelling at that gave me a lot of confidence. And I tell people that also want to write, it's a really good way to do it. I mean, it's a good way to get your confidence levels up. So I felt kind of confident I could do it. What I didn't expect, and I was very strategic. I was strategic in that a memoir seemed like a good bet because I thought, oh, I'm known as a bass player in a band, and if I come out and go, here's my collection of literary short stories, that the reaction would be, yeah, what makes her think she can do that? So I felt like if I did a memoir first and did a really good job, did the best I could, that it might open the door, it might swing a little open for me to be taken, at least given the consideration of being a real writer. And
so real.
And I thought a memoir is a story that only I can tell. And what made the whole thing fall into place was I had this year, and I'm a blabbermouth. If you want me to
blab on, babe.
Okay, because I'll just like you'll be going, okay, why did she ask me here? She won't shut up. What was I going to say?
So you had a year.
I totally lost my train of thought. Okay, I had a year of where I said yes. That's another one of my little tips of life. Sometimes you just say yes to everything. And that year meant judging a scarecrow contest at the Umlauf Center, judging an ice cream contest, which was awesome, and doing a book panel at the Texas Book Festival with a writer named Jessica Hopper from Chicago. And it was there that particular yes led to my memoir, because Gianna was there, saw me, asked me if I would be interested in writing a memoir. I'm like, yes, as a matter of fact, I would be. And that started the journey, that started it. And there was some strategy, there was some luck, there was some I feel, and then the good answer, I guess I should say the good answer. The good answer is that I felt that not enough women in music stories had been told, and that there was a story there. And what made a 15-year-old in 1974 want to be in a rock and roll band? There weren't a lot of girls that wanted to do that. And I felt like what had brought me to that was a story in of itself.
Yeah.
And I thought I had a good story. I'd read enough. I'm not like you've done. I haven't read a lot of memoirs. And the ones I have read are more like not the rock ones, but I'd read enough to think, well, I've got a pretty compelling story too. So
there's so many. I mean, we could, if we have time, I want to go into like all the other things you got right. But so in addition to all the asterisks and stars and exclamation points that I put throughout the book, I also put a box around every time you mentioned the year or how old you were. And every time this happened, I was always stunned first of all, how much you packed into a year, and then how young you were. So I don't know if there's anyone here with us who hasn't read the book. I'm sorry if you haven't. Get that corrected immediately. But for those who haven't, you have this really great couple of capsule descriptions that pretty much explain everything about your childhood. You are the only child of a single mom who, quote, wanted a pal. And you go on to say that in our little family, we took care of ourselves. So with that as a background, which I think, we understand, we get your childhood. I looked particularly at the year when you were 14, kind of blew me away. So you want to talk a little bit about what you were doing at the age of 14 while the rest of us were maybe babysitting or...
Well, what I remember mostly about that year was I was hitchhiking a lot. And it was the 70s. It was like a different era for sure. I'm not sure if I'm...
Okay.
Am I missing something?
Can I give you the answer to
Yeah,
this question?
yeah.
Here.
Yeah, I feel like I failed the flunk the test.
You worked at a boutique in London. You were a trim carpenter.
Oh, yeah.
Cutting, using a router saw, cutting angles.
Oh, I loved that job, yeah.
And your boyfriend was a grown man.
Yeah. So I was basically just whatever. I mean, I was feral. I was feral, and but at the same time, I needed money. We were poor, and the opportunities came, and
I mean, it's astonishing how much ground you covered in your young years.
Well, it's funny because when I first talked to UT Press about doing the book, they said the one thing we want is an outline. That's the one thing you have to do to make this happen. And every fiber in me was like, outline, and I just, the thought of it, and it turned out to be the absolute best thing ever.
It's got a great structure.
And it was the outline that let me see all the things that happened. The outline is what let me see the story arc. The outline is where I saw this is going to be a page turner.
Yeah,
the outline gave me confidence because I thought
so
there's no dead zones in here.
There are no dead zones. It starts off with your daughter asking, why. I mean, it's so great. Somebody asks you, why are you writing this? And you say why you're writing it. And, we immediately understood where we were going.
Well,
and
your
you got us there fast.
Your experience with this, because that was another rule, is you have to, I guess in the introduction, you have to say why you're writing the book and why it matters. That was the thing I hated the second most.
Don't recall that rule, but I guess it's a pretty good one.
Yeah, and I thought I didn't like that at all, and walked around for months going, I don't know, because I want to, and it was only when I put it through my daughter's question that I was able to start figuring out why I was doing it and why it mattered.
So, I apologize. You probably are so sick of telling this story, but it's such a great story, and it kind of speaks to what an astonishingly quick study you are. But would you mind telling, for the jillionth time, the story of how you became a go-go?
Of course. It's legendary. It's part of the myth, and it's all true. It's not like a fake myth. It's a real myth, but I had moved to LA in search of fame and fortune, and I'd been playing guitar. Playing guitar, and for 5 years. In my mind, I was a seasoned pro. I'd been in 3 bands, and so when I first moved to LA to make it, I did see the Go-Go's in a club, and I thought they had. And my polite way of writing about it was, I thought they had a long way to go. I probably thought something a lot more harsh in reality. But a year later, I saw them, and they were really good. And they'd gotten a great drummer. Any musician out there knows you're only as good as your drummer. So I had quit the Textones, the band I was in, and for the first time since moving there, I was 20, 21, and lost. You know, everything felt like it was, omens were happening, like I'm on my way. I was jamming with Buddy Miles, and Smokey Robinson came in and sang with, and I was meeting kind of famous people, like, I don't know, just different people. And so I thought, like, LA's like the fairy dust land. I'm in the right place, I'm gonna make it. For the first time in a couple of years, I was lost, and I went to the Whiskey A Go-Go one night, and I ran into Charlotte, who played guitar in the Go-Go's, and she said, "We have 4 nights coming up at the Whiskey. Our bass player's sick. Do you play bass?" And I tell you, and I loved writing about this. I mean, I really loved writing about it.
I could tell, yeah.
I just remember saying, "Yeah, I play bass."
Who doesn't?
Sure I do. And she said, "Would you be able to do this?" I was like, "Yeah, I can do that." And I left and immediately got a bass, borrowed a bass, was just itching to like get something, you know, to learn the songs. And the next morning she brought a cassette over. This is the cassette days. And I had a little Radio Shack cassette player, and I learned all their songs. It sounded like but I managed to listen to it over and over and over, and learned their set in 3 days. And it was probably the most undiluted, focused effort I'd ever put out in my life, you know. And in the course of learning their songs, I thought, you know, I would play the triangle to be in this band. It's like I could hear everything that I had moved to LA for, they embodied. I was like, this band can make it. I knew it. I knew the band could make it. I knew it.
What made you know that? Was it the crowd reaction?
They were certainly like popular. You know, I hadn't experienced that. When I write about playing my first gig, I was like everything had happened to me as a musician except what happened with them, which was having a sold out club with people going nuts, like knowing your songs and just like, you know, and all of them. And I'd never experienced that. And I was like, this is it. This is all. And as far as I was concerned, I had arrived. And it wasn't just this band can make it. This band also represented the underpinnings or pinings, the under things that was driving me, which was the longing to be in a family. To me, a band represented a family. And these, as an only child without any parenting, these girls to me felt like the sisters, the family, the band. It was like everything. It was like just this big glom of, I want this.
Yeah, it was all there.
Yeah.
And that's just astonishing, not just to learn a new instrument, but another band's entire body of work.
Yeah, I was determined. I wanted in every way to make sure that I got to stay. And to me that meant you play great, you don't make any mistakes, you just do everything right.
Man, did you ever. So one of the other great gifts of this book is how vividly you portray everyone. They just jump off the page, like you write about a whippet in red lipstick. I see that woman. A friend who was off-brand like me, and someone who just escaped being pretty. So, but I also love how you captured Austin and made the city also into another indelible character. So you write, Austin in the 70s was a mecca for music, a very lax mecca. What do you think would be different about you if you'd been raised somewhere else?
I probably would have had a lot more books out instead of records.
Really?
Yeah, I probably, because I was a good writer always. I mean, in terms of like turning in, I wasn't writing, you know, literary novels as an elementary school kid, but I could write, you know. So I always thought if I went to college, I would have been an English major. And if I'd known like how many doors like writing a book opens, It's like you could like work so hard on making a record and then like 4 people buy it and listen to it. And it's like, I'm like, God, it's a lot better writing books.
No, I've always thought that. It's like having musical talent is almost a curse.
Yeah, I don't know.
Supremely gifted and you're playing at the Holiday Inn Lounge.
Oh, it's like crazy. I mean, it's if you're a musician, I think, I mean, I write about that, what it feels like to be a musician. So yeah, if you're a musician, you're going to do it no matter what. You're going to do it whether anyone's there, whether there's sold out with the Go-Go's or, 8 people in some weird place in Germany. It's like that's what you will do. But yeah, if I hadn't been in Austin, I've always credited to being a musician.
Yeah.
It was, and it wasn't because I saw other women doing it, It wasn't because of that. It was just, the education part of it, the education of being exposed to so many different kinds of music. And it really helped me as a bass player. I'd never paid attention to the bass. I could sing every lick off of Led Zeppelin 4, but I never even paid attention to the bass. But my musical education in Austin gave me the knowledge to play the bass because I knew how that band was supposed to sound. I knew when I'm quoting myself, but I knew when it needed to swing, and I knew when it needed to drive, and I knew when it needed melody, and so that background made me the musician I am because of the breadth of, or the spectrum of music.
So when you got to LA, did you feel like that gave you kind of a head start on other musicians, this sort of different depth that Austin?
People from Texas think we're better than anyone else anyway.
You put your finger on it.
We think our guitar players are the best guitar players, and we think our drummers are the best drummers.
But might that be true?
Yeah.
Your book is just packed with great stories. Are there any that you purposely left out of the book? I don't mean like stuff you edited out, but stories that you chose not to include.
There's things I chose, and then there's things I learned, like after about 10 chapters, that there's this thing called moving the story forward. And there's a difference between, I started joking that I was like, okay, I've been writing a memoir, not a memoir, because if I remembered it, I wrote about it, and I wrote really great pages and pages about it. And I learned after about 10 chapters, it doesn't matter if you wrote 10 great pages about something you remember. What matters is the story.
That's where you got that velocity.
What's that?
Moving it forward.
Yeah.
It just made it unputdownable.
But there was one story I really like, so if you've read the book, you know that I meet a fella in like 84, I think, and Clem Burke from Blondie, and he becomes the hero of the story in many ways, which is fitting because he had a rough road with me as his girlfriend for the time we were together. But Clem is, he's the drummer from Blondie, very like super cool, and like just lives for pop culture. So one time we were in New York and we went to I think it was the Bottom Line, and we saw Lou Reed. Now, I'm from Texas. I grew up on ZZ Top. To me, I knew who Lou Reed, I liked Walk on the Wild Side, but the Velvet Underground, to me, they didn't really sound like rock and roll. It always sounded kind of like, I don't know, like, this is like so sacrilege now, but I just didn't think of it like as real rockin' stuff. It wasn't
no, Nico
like,
wasn't.
It wasn't like,
super
Black Sabbath or, it wasn't even the Stones. So we go see Lou Reed, and afterwards we go back and we meet Lou Reed, and I said to Lou Reed, wow, that really rocked. I didn't know you could rock. And Clem's face was like the most horror, and the whole way, he's like, how could you do that? How could you say that to Lou Reed? Lou Reed is the definition of rock and roll. He's the epitome. He invented rock and roll. How could you say that? I thought he would dump me on the spot. And I've always remembered that, because the look Lou Reed gave me, too, was like, I mean, Lou Reed is not known for being Mr. Nice anyway, so to have some stupid,
surprise.
probably drunk,
What a surprise, Lou.
24-year-old saying, "Oh, I didn't know you rocked." You know?
How non-geriatric of you, Lou.
Yeah, so that didn't get written about, and I don't know if it would have translated as
Probably
well.
a
So
good
thank you
call.
for giving me the chance to tell it.
That's a great story.
And then I had another one. This is a little more salacious, but
Excellent.
I went to I went to a club once with Belinda had a friend who was really good friends with Rock Hudson. And so we're like hanging out in LA in Boys Town with Rock Hudson. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I'm like, Rock Hudson is sitting there and he's Rock Hudson and he's right there and he's my friend now and we're hanging out. And so apparently Rock liked me and got my phone number and called me like 3 nights later and invited me to come hang out with him and his guy friend. And I have no idea what it was for, but I was terrified. I was like, oh, no. I was like I was just scared. But there's a story in the book about like having a Bob Dylan song that he said I could write the lyrics to, and I lost the cassette. So this is another cassette I lost. I lost Rock Hudson on my answer phone tape, inviting me to come hang out with him and his guy friend. So that's another story. I mean, there's just lots of stuff. You can't put it all in.
You connected with Rock.
I know.
Damn.
Me and Rock. Really?
Damn.
We could have been.
I wonder, you probably like your spunky Texas gal spirit.
You never know. Yeah, it's like.
So you mentioned several times in the book that you have a real aversion to being solo. And that you didn't like being in the limelight. You had this terrific drive to be part of a band that felt like a family. So now, at this point, how does it feel to be a solo act, to have your face and only your face and only your name?
This is a great question, and it's a great topic because I feel like most of us, you get to an age where you look back and think, what would I have done differently? And most of the time I would think nothing, but I have to say this book has given me like this experience of being Kathy Valentine instead of just being somebody in a band. And it made me realize how safe I always was in the band. I was safe. And I don't want to be a solo artist. I never did want to be that person. I feel like I knew what my strengths and my weaknesses were. My strengths were, not being the front person. But if I wish that with that single-minded purpose of wanting to make it in a band, I wish once that had happened that maybe I had been a little less scared to be Kathy Valentine, because it's a little bittersweet now to be 62 years old and enjoying being me without that safety padding all around me. And I think I would tell people that, I mean, a lot of people, that's what they want. And I still don't want to be a solo music artist, but I like being me where I can play some music, write some stuff, talk to people, connect with people. I really like it. And I wonder what it would have been like to do this sooner,
And how sad that you had how many city tour planned for the release of the book?
Yeah,
that
I
all
had
got
a
canceled?
25, I was super excited, because it was pretty quickly after writing the book that I saw, there's nothing like writing a memoir to make you see the whole patterns of your life. And I saw, wow, you were safe. Like nobody was ever going to see any band I was in and go, that band is so good, except for that chick right there, that Kathy Valentine, she's got to go. That was never going to happen to me. I was always safe, and I liked that safety net, but
now you're out here on your own, girl.
yeah, and still in the band, so I could have done both.
So, the Go-Go's were recently inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as Jason mentioned.
I've been writing my induction speech.
Oh, excellent. So what does it mean to you? I mean, is it surreal? Is it annoyingly overdue? Can you even comprehend the enormity of an achievement like this?
Honestly, it feels like it's good for my resume.
Seriously?
I feel like it just is going to give me a little bit, it's one more thing. It's like the realtor that has like all the initials, like you don't even know what they are, you know? But it's like, it feels like something that will help get me work, that will help get me speaking things, get me events. It feels like it'll help me continue along this phase of being Kathy Valentine. That's the honest thing I am happy and excited about. And equal to that is, I think that to be in a position where I and the Go-Go's as a whole, as an entity, can advocate for more women. I think that the door will open wider, and I think that there wouldn't be less of us if more of us were visible. Mm-hmm. And I think it's their job to make us visible, even if we weren't as big as, I'm thinking, Coldplay or U2, even if a woman's band, if Slater-Kinney or Bikini Kill or Hall, if any of those bands that weren't as big as those other bands still inspired people and young women to have a voice, then they are significant and they deserve a place. And I think that's my main thing. There wouldn't be less of us if more of us were visible, and I think our visibility will help bring more into that place. And the thing is, everybody, not everybody, now you can go on YouTube and you can see, like you can go girls that shred. And there's like endless videos of gals sitting in their bedroom shredding away on their guitars, but they're not out in the world making bands. Why not? Why aren't they making bands?
Question. Why, in all these years since the Go-Go's, has there not been another all-female band as successful?
That's a topic that interests me a lot, and I think a lot of it is the problem with getting to an age where maybe you want to have a home and a family, and the guy has a baby and goes off on the road. And so the one like Kristen Hirsch is a great example of somebody that isn't Pink or Chrissy Hynde or Ann and Nancy Wilson, who can afford to go out with nannies and stuff. And I think that those stories need to be told, that it is possible to not have all, but it's hard. It's really hard. Kristen's book that's out now, another UT Press book, Seeing
Another
Sideways.
book.
It's a great book, and it talks a lot about being a musician and being a mom. And so I think that's one of the things, and I don't know. I just feel like I was going to say, like on YouTube now, you can look up female groups of the 60s, and you can see that there was bands starting in 1962 and 64, female bands. And maybe they didn't make it big, maybe they didn't turn into Herman's Hermits or whatever, but they were still doing it, and I think their stories matter, and I think if they had been visible, I'd never heard of Fanny, for example. Fanny's a band that was in the early 70s. I'd never heard of them. Maybe if I had heard of them and lots of girls my age had heard or at least seen them or knew about them, maybe the visibility would have caused there to be, and it's such a numbers game. If you have 20 female bands, how many of them are going to have all the goods? Maybe none of them. But on that same, you have 2,000 guy bands. So out of those two, the numbers game, there's just going to be more guys getting to the top and being, the Green Day and the Foo Fighter and all the bands that are kind of sustaining long careers. It's just a numbers game, and there needs to be more and more women doing it and starting bands, and then we'll be more in the, whatever you call it, landscape, pantheon.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I so appreciate your memoir and UT Press's series about female musicians, which are
So that's the main thing with getting the Rock Hall, is good on the CV and bring more women into the
So the
fold.
induction ceremony is what? It's going to be in Cleveland in 2 weeks?
Yes.
So A, who do you think should introduce you? And B, what are you going to wear?
I already know who's introducing us, but it says they like it to be a surprise, and I think it will be a surprise to a lot of people. And as over the years, the Go-Go's have gotten very different. Like, making any decision is so hard because we are very different people, and we have very different taste and very different ideas. So it's kind of like this. Luckily, we're more mature and communicative, but we disagree about everything. You know, we're just not on the same page at all. So, and when you're younger, we were like, everybody had the same focus and the same energy and liked the same thing, and we were just like 5 combined energies making this rocket, you know, and it helped. You know, things could get done, but now it's harder. So it was hard even coming up with people that we would like to induct us.
Oh, yeah.
Very different ideas about that. And wearing, there's a great, I'll plug Fort Lonesome here in Austin. They're helping snazz and bedazzle and shiny up my outfit.
Oh, can't wait to see that.
I can't wait either.
Can't wait to see that. So you wrote in the book about after your second album came out and you were put in the lady box.
Yeah.
And you were anointed as America's pop sweetheart. The Girls Next Door, the most benign of all lady boxes.
Yeah,
so.
Benign lady box. That's a good one.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it was, you know, we weren't trying to be sex pots, number one. Mm-hmm. So we weren't like the sex kitten, the sex pot. We weren't like dressing like guys and standing like guys and being guys. And so we were just kind of like, oh, go to the thrift store, oh, I like this, and I'm gonna tie this around my head, and I'm gonna match this with that, and just kind of like what any girl would do. And so they didn't really know what to think of us, you know, because we were feminine without being girly. You know what I mean? We weren't like sweet and girly, but the problem was our music was fun and it was uplifting and we made people happy and it was a good time to come see the Go-Go's. So that kind of fed into this harmless, benign thing, you know, and it just it felt a lot like we were constantly being kind of one-dimensionalized.
Yeah, I think you write really well about the essence of the band was joy. You know, it's just a joyful experience to hear it. It's joyful for you to create the music, and that's kind of a hard category for probably music writers to describe. Like, how do you talk about joy? And so they come down to America's Sweethearts.
Yeah, and they would, you know, the main offenders was the stylist and the photographers, which you would think that they're artists, you know, and that they would be not the main offenders, but it often, after the fact, I would think, like, I bet they didn't try to dress up Duran Duran when they came into the photo studio, or say, here, we thought you could put on this little polka dot pair of pants, John Taylor. You know, or hey, Edge, why don't you put on this little
these white Hanes
this
underwear.
little, yeah, you know, it just felt like we got treated differently, or like, hey, you know, trying to think of another band from hey, NXS, why don't you hold these balloons and lick lollipops for this photo?
Did that really happen?
Yes.
Oh,
And we are responsible because half the time we'd go like, no way, we're not doing that. And half the time we're like, yeah, whatever, we'll get it over with. I want to go back to the hotel.
yeah, and you also think they know what they're doing.
You just kind of, sometimes you're tired and you just want to get it over with. And you're just like, whatever will make them shut up and take the picture. Okay, give me the balloon. I want to go home.
So you mentioned how you save everything, journals, personal essays, itineraries, calendars. Has anything in the book, has anyone challenged you about anything in the book?
Yeah. Jane challenged me about when she quit the band. And she said that's not how it happened. And I freaked out because, we've had our ups and downs, and the last thing I wanted was to, but my book was coming out. It's like I couldn't go change it. So I was like, Jane's mad at me. But then I realized that's the way she remembers it. This is the way I remember it. I'm not writing her story. I'm writing what I remember. And if she, she can write her book and do it the way she remembers it.
Probably happy to publish it.
So yeah, that was. And there's certain things I think we've all experienced where you can be with somebody and go, remember we did that, and you had that red jacket on? I don't even have a red jacket. What are you talking about? And it's like, no, it's like when somebody's dead certain of their facts.
Yeah, I talk to my brothers and sisters, and it's like, we must have grown up in different families. Our recollections are so different.
Yeah, memory that's one thing I learned. Another thing I learned writing a memoir was how memory is just so malleable, and it really can change, from person to person.
So your daughter left for college recently, and you reached out to friends, asked them to share wisdom they wish someone had told them as they were entering adulthood. So what do you wish you had known at her age, or you wish somebody had told you?
Just what I said earlier. I told her that I was at her age, I was so many of the things already that I wanted to be, and that I wish I had known that. And I said, sometimes, I said, just trust that maybe you already are what you want to be.
Wow. So now that you've launched her into the world, what do you feel like the next stage of your life is going to look like?
I really want to continue being a writer. My book stops at the age of 30, and I have another entirely different arc that touches on a lot of things that I think are significant and compelling. And it's a lot of it's about finding your place in the world, as a person that's older, and what that means in the 2022s and beyond. And so writing, and I'm thinking about getting into an MFA program so that maybe I could teach, at some point. I'm thinking about that. And reconnecting with friends. I have a lot more time to be with friends now, and I'm trying to be more social. And I don't know, pretty much just, and doing more well, this is a book event, but I'd like to do more speaking. I'd like to be someone that gets to do speaking things a lot and plays a few songs, and
I'd pay for that.
I'm kind of good at it, and I'm old enough to know that I don't do stuff if I don't think I could be good at it. So I think I could, if I could just keep getting the opportunity to do it, I think that I would become a little industry. I'm not going to say brand. I'm a brand.
And now you've got that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on your
that'll
resume,
help.
so
Yeah.
that'd be lining up.
Book me.
So one of the things, among many things I appreciated, but I really loved how you wrote about something that very few artists will admit, and that's envy. And you talk about how it's kind of endemic to the artist's life, and how you personally felt that. You compare yourself with, I think you mentioned the Bangles, and then what the other Go-Go's were doing at various points. So How did you get past that?
You know, you're not the first person that read what I wrote as envy, and I didn't mean to write it like that, but yet it came across like that, because what I really felt, I didn't begrudge anybody success, and I still don't, but what I felt an intense sense of was like, where's mine?
Right.
And I think that's something that anybody can relate to. You know, it's like, it's not so much that you are jealous or envious, but it's like, okay, good for them, but where's mine? I'm good too. I deserve it too. And that's what I was feeling a lot of. Like, I just thought, you know, why don't I get to do the thing? And I only compared myself to them because they were my sisters. I didn't compare myself to other people. And with the Bangles, it just triggered this fury that my band had broken up, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we paved the way,
And
then they got the big record deal and got Prince and got la 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 la, and you know, and we're just like a little shambled wreck, broken down thing on the road. So it wasn't jealousy for the success, but it was like a impotent fury that
Yeah.
like I think what I wrote in the book was like, I wanted women to be doing what the Bangles were doing, wanted that, but I didn't want to be watching from the sidelines. You know, I wanted it to be all of us together, you know, going down the road and kicking some of the guy bands out of the way to make some room.
You just have so many memorable lines that you write about. There are an awful lot of pit stops on the road to nowhere, and fun was the phantom that had shaded my entire adult life. My 20s were like a wind tunnel. And the end is just heartbreakingly beautiful. I should actually make you read it. You want to read it?
Sure. What end is it? It's funny that one line you just said, the first one, like there was a lot of pit stops on the road to nowhere. I thought it was pretty good, but the one like harsh critic that wrote about my book like just attacked that line.
Well, they don't know nothing.
Oh, these are your questions. You don't need to read your questions.
Yeah, whatever you like about the end. Oh, here's another. I escorted my hangover. Good lines, Kathy.
Well, this is just like it's in the epilogue, and it talks about there's a lot left to the story. And I'm trying to allude to the fact that a lot of Go-Go's fans aren't Kathy Valentine fans, which is why I need to be more Kathy Valentine so that I can find my fans. But a lot of them were like really mad at me that I didn't talk about like other stuff, like when they kicked me out of the band. But I'm like, that happened like way after the book ended. The book ends in 1990. That happened in 2014. But I wanted to allude to it because I think I had a reader say, you can't just ignore it. So there's a lot left to that story. That's me alluding. This story detailed the phenomenon of 5 women who formed a sisterhood and did something together that hadn't been done before. We're still predictably manic and unpredictably sensitive, and even though everyone is the same person she is, in or out of the band, being together changes everyone slightly. And this is so true. It's just enough to bring out the best and the worst in each other. I mean, like being in a band, there's nothing really like it. It's like a little bit marriage, in our case, like a same-sex polygamous marriage. It's a little bit like a family with all the dysfunction. It's a little bit like a business. And there's nothing quite like being in a band and the way it ties you together. We managed to record more, tour more, and break up more, all the way up until 2012. During that year, the wrong history repeated itself, and I became the fired bass player. That's the one, I'm alluding to the one whose place I took. It was undoubtedly the worst and ugliest era in this decades-long 5-way relationship. But in usual Go-Go's fashion, the split couldn't stick, and we returned intact with homecoming shows, a Broadway musical, and a documentary film, and an induction into the Rock Hall. In short, we've had more than enough betrayals, breakups, and backstabbing, as well as public fallings out, and private knockdowns. We've also grown up together, helped and supported each other, learned from each other, and accepted and changed with each other. Dysfunction is in our DNA, but it's a tenderness and strong imperfection that seems to also keep us connected. Maybe this should be my Rock Hall induction speech.
Absolutely.
They're like, pull me off the stage. You're fired.
So while you all have a chance to think about your questions that we're going to open up Kathy in a while, I'm going to just fire some goofy ones at you.
Oh, good. I like fire goof.
Okay. How did you get Amy Poehler to write a blurb for your book?
Well, I met her and I asked her. I'm a big believer. This is something I've always told my daughter. Always ask for what you want. Always ask for what you want. And in my case, if they say no, ask them again. Or ask someone else. And then if they say no, ask someone else and ask them. And I literally have to say no, hear no, and this doesn't apply to guys on a date, by the way. So I have to hear no. I feel like I have to throw that in there. I have to hear no a lot of times before I accept it. And by that time, I've pretty much decided I didn't want it anyway. So it's a method that works really well. But I met her, and we were chatting, and I said I had a book coming out. Would you write a blurb for it? And she said yes.
Long live the go-go.
And then the hard part is getting her to actually do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Took a little bit of prodding.
No, you just kind of got to go through the people then, because she wasn't like, here's my number, call me when you want it.
All right, Kathy Valentine, what is on your nightstand?
Oh, my nightstand has George Saunders' The Decline of Civil War Land, a short story collection. I'm reading lots of short stories because I would very much like my next book to be a collection of literary short stories. So I'm reading tons of them, not only because my attention span is not what it used to be, but because that's my way of learning what other people do and figuring out, oh, you can do that? Oh, I never thought of doing so.
Take notes at your rock and roll camp. She's gonna be one of the celebrities at a rock and roll camp.
Yeah.
That just sounds like a perfect short story.
Maybe I should. Yeah, I actually wrote in my little list of short stories. I wrote one maybe about a band or music, just because I know it,
Yeah, there's a thought.
But where's the plot?
So you're also reading Edna O'Brien?
I read Edna O'Brien because I was just in Dublin for the first time. And I picked up James Joyce too, and I'm trying. I'm trying.
How many of us have picked up James Joyce?
Well, they have this museum called the Museum of Irish Literature, and it's like James Joyce. That's like, So I was like, okay, I really got to read Dubliners or something. So it's on the bedside table.
It's there. You'll get to it.
Then I thought, well, there's other Irish writers. I'll read Edna O'Brien first.
Good call.
Ease into James.
So, having written a couple of perfect pop songs yourself, what is your idea of some perfect pop songs? Or even songs you wish you had written yourself?
I freaking love Traveling downtown with the girl I love, and I'll forget you. So I love that and crazy.
I love that song.
Crazy. I guess he's been canceled, but what a genius!
Yeah.
CeeLo and Gnarls Barkley. I guess they're the same. I don't know. My daughter's turned me on to lots of stuff. I love some of the Bowie stuff. Rebel. So that just driving, swinging, driving stuff. I'm blanking. others. Oh, for Austin people, one of my dearest songs that I wish I'd written is Fastball, The Way.
Oh.
And I'm always mystified because in the car, like I can never get the words right in the chorus. Like I've heard it a million times, and I'm singing along, and I'm down the dray, like I'm like can't catch up, and I'm like.
So I'm going to ask you one last question before I open this up. But a friend of mine interviewed you after the Bastrop fires and told me to ask you this question. If your house was on fire, what one item would you save?
I remember this question. I said, would I save?
No, would you save?
No, I don't think that was the question was like, what's the first? I said I would run out of the house, but I would grab my bra.
That's the answer.
Because I said, I don't want to be flopping around outside while my house burns down.
That's the question. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, hello.
Hey Kathy, so we actually met about 4 years ago when I first moved to Austin. I went to go see the Bluebonnets, and y'all were amazing. And I sat with this woman. There was like one chair left, and you came up at the end, and it turns out it was actually your mother, and you introduced yourself, and it was just like a really cool moment for me. But my question was, how does your mom feel about this book? Because obviously there's a lot that I didn't know, just having seen you in the band and everything. Just
Great question. My mom's willingness to let me write everything that I wanted to write made me realize how brave she is. I thought she was incredibly brave, and it gave me a lens to view my parenting, because as I was writing it, I'm just like, because I'm a mom of a young teenage, I'm writing about, getting pregnant and getting raped and crawling in drunk, and my daughter's the same age, and I'm writing about me, I'm like, Jesus Christ, Mom. I would ask her, because I felt strongly that my story was good without any of that. Like, I didn't really need to include something that anyone felt uncomfortable with. There was plenty of other stuff. So every time I'd say, Mom, I'm going to write about this. Are you cool with that? Oh, yeah, it's your story. You write what you want. And that lens made me realize that for all the things that she didn't do, what she did do was support me. She supported what I wanted to do. When I was miserable in school, she took me out of school and put me in a hippie commune school. That's brave. She didn't give a shit what anybody thought. Her daughter's not happy. And when I wanted to quit, I was going to ACC. When I wanted to quit and move to California and be in a band, she was like, she didn't buy me she didn't have enough money, but she drove me to get my first guitar. And looking back, even when I was like young, I would say, I want to be like Darren Stevens. That's this show called Bewitched. And most little girls wanted to be like Bewitched, but I wanted to be like the advertising executive. I don't know why. And so I would write all these commercials out, like Darren would. And like, where's Larry Tate? And my mom would send them.
You would have been a writer. You so would have been a writer.
She would send them to the companies. And I actually got letters saying, thank you, but we have people that do this. Thank you for... So I was able to, so she was very brave. When she read it, because UT Press, like after they got the final draft, they're like, the only thing we're worried about is your mom. Can you get her to sign something that says that she's not going to sue us? And I was like, not going to happen. But I did have her read it finally. And she said, I thought I did a good job. And I said, Mom, if you hadn't been who you were, my book would have been so much more boring. And she knows that I appreciate that she let me tell the truth. And it was the truth. And I also, this challenge was, I hope that I did, those of you that have read it, maybe you could tell me, but I didn't want to demonize her. I didn't want to make her the bad guy. I didn't want to, because and I hope I didn't. I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to be honest and truthful and not whitewash. And my mantra for writing the memoir was blood on the page, short of being a gaping open wound. That was my parameters.
You hit it, yeah. Any other questions? Hello.
I just wanted to start off the statement first. I'm reading your voice on and off. She's watching it on the live stream, but she wanted to say she's a huge fan of the Go-Go's and you. But she had a couple of questions she wanted me to ask for her. The first one being, was the VH1 episode on the Go-Go's behind the band truthful about why the band broke up in the Wild Partying class?
About the what? What's the last part in the what?
The wild party.
Oh, the wild party. Yeah, that's all true.
And the second question is how you truly feel about being a pioneer for women entering the music industry.
The first question, Behind the Music was, they have a template or a format, and they very much only took the parts of our story that fit their format, which is very much about drama and negative. It didn't really celebrate the band or our music. One thing I notice with the Go-Go's a lot is our music gets overlooked constantly, and there's not that many bands that can go out 45 years after their first record and have 9-year-olds that are singing along, knowing your songs, and their bigger sisters who are 15 or 16 knowing your songs and loving them, and their mothers who are in their 20s, and they're people that, so I am so proud of that. I think that that's a really special thing. It doesn't get recognized. So, wait, how did I get on that track?
VH1 kind of sidestep.
Okay, so they didn't focus on the music. Behind the music, how about the music? And they didn't focus on the joyful stuff. So we weren't really happy with it, and they don't pay you hardly anything, and we didn't feel like it was the greatest thing. But why we broke up, there was a lot of problems. We were fighting about the fact that some people were making piles of more money than other people, and we fought about, I don't know, there's just a lot of hurt feelings it's like sometimes when you get in a fight with somebody and you break up and they're like, and you said this, and you don't even remember it, but they've been harboring it. We had a lot of that, where you didn't even remember. So, but the real reason I think we broke up is because we were really immature, and when you're in a band, you don't grow up. It's not like my daughter's 18 and she's in college, and she's got 4 years to kind of grow up a little. And we didn't have that. We didn't have that growing up period. We just I should speak for me. I had the maturity of a 16-year-old when I was 30. So I think we didn't have any compassion for each other. I remember Belinda's father, who she'd never seen, showed up unannounced in Baton Rouge, and we're just like, oh yeah, whatever. It's like heavy emotional stuff, or my dad saying he was going to come and not showing up. Things that normally your friends would go, oh, come here, and we were just like, well, whatever, I think what I wrote in the book was that, everything was game and good except for real feelings, and that was you were left. And then the other question about being a pioneer, I feel like I love hearing from people that, I'm always surprised at the people that have said that they had Go-Go's posters on the walls. I've heard from hip-hop people and country people, and it's not just the narrow audience that I thought, but I also understand it, because for me, Suzi Quatro was that for me. If I had not seen Suzi Quatro in leather playing an instrument, fronting a band, and rocking out with kind of the same hair I have now, I don't know if I would have thought to be in a band. I hadn't made that jump. I loved all these bands. I was playing guitar Wildwood Flower, This Land Is Your Land, guitar, love rock and roll bands, guitar. Like I wasn't making that jump that I could plug it in and do it, and seeing her bridge that. And so it makes me happy to think that we could do that for others.
Any other questions? Right?
My name is Ginger. This is my dad who loves you and Coco so much.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask if you had any advice for young women in music who are from Austin and plan on moving to LA to do the same thing you did, I guess. Any advice for young women in music who also want to pursue a successful career in like pop music?
Yeah, it's a very, very different business than when it seems like on the one hand it's a lot harder to do it the way we did it, but on the other hand there's a lot of things you can do. And I think if I was starting out, like, for one thing, write songs. I mean, you know, where's it going to take you if you're just playing other people's songs? I mean, if you just want to be a good musician and hopefully get in somebody's touring band or something, then that's a fine goal. And in that case, you just practice a whole bunch and get really good and be really great, and then hopefully get a good gig. But if your goal is to be like sustain a career or just make enough money to like live and not have a day job, learn some recording software, you know, so that you can be making and creating all the time, whether you're, you know, where you're not dependent on other people. So you can, because that way, I think of it as like, how many places can you plug in? You know, if you can play some instruments, if you can compose, if you can record, you might be able to earn a living. You know, you might be able to get hired to do music for TV shows or commercials or films. So there's a lot. I would do everything. I would constantly be writing songs and collaborating with other people that I could learn from. And I hate that you have to do this, but I would make sure that I was really good at SoundCloud and YouTube and every tool you have at your disposal. It's exhausting, you know, to me it's exhausting keeping up with it. But if I was young, that's what I would do. I would use everything available to get better, to be as diverse as I can, and to just be able to plug in wherever, you know.
One last question back here.
So congratulations on the inductions to Rock Hall. Hope you all have a great time. I'm sure you will. What if it was only up to Kathy Valentine? Who was going to induct the Go-Go's? You didn't have to consult the other Go-Go's. You guys should do that. Who would be on your short list?
I wanted Patti Smith.
Ah.
Because, and I wouldn't have never dreamed of even getting her, except she mentions Belinda's name in her last book. She says why Belinda Carlisle matters. She has a chat. I don't even know I haven't even read the book, but if she put why Belinda Carlisle matters, then I thought, well, maybe she would do it.
Yeah.
And I think she would have given like a little kind of gravitas to the situation and a lot of cred, big time cred.
Yeah.
But she wasn't even asked. So I feel like if I decided everything, we would be a lot better off.
I think we can agree.
I think everything would have been different and better. But you know, that's the curse of being in a band.
Well, I have just had this fabulous conversation with Kathy Valentine. I think you all would like to join me in thanking Kathy.
Oh, thank you all. I just want to finish with saying I didn't think anybody at all would be here. So thank you, people that showed up and people that are on the live stream. I don't know how to thank you. I don't know how to interact with you. If the camera's up there, I'm waving at you. So thank you for tuning in and for the people that showed up. Man, I literally could cry. It makes me so happy to think that anybody would show up. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Now what?
Book sales and signing in the front lobby.